All right, so we have a lot to cover today. And again, like I said, we do want it to be interactive, so feel free to enter into the Q&A or raise your hand at any point during today's session. So on the agenda, we're going to talk about Valley Water and who we are as an agency. We're going to talk about our Safe Clean Water program, which is the funding source for all of our grants and partnerships. And then we're going to talk about what's available this year in the 2021 grant funding cycle, the funding that's available, and then the different criteria and process and timeline for the main grants and the mini grants. And then we'll do an online tutorial that Amy will lead us through how to use our Fluxx grants management system and get started with your application. And then we'll have a dedicated time for question and answer at the end, but again, feel free to ask at any time. All right. So we are the Santa Clara Valley Water District, and we recently rebranded our moniker to Valley Water. And we are the county's wholesale water provider, and we also do flood protection and healthy creek and ecosystem, so environmental stewardship. And our mission is to provide Silicon Valley safe, clean water for a healthy life, environment, and economy. So all of our grant funding opportunities tie back to our Valley Water mission. So like I said, the funding source for all of the Valley Water grants and partnerships is the Safe Clean Water and Natural Flood Protection Program. And this is a 15-year strategy to ensure uninterrupted water resources services. It's a parcel tax that was approved by the voters to begin in 2012. And there's a specific piece of this program that dedicates funding for community grants and partnerships under certain categories and criteria. So that's what we'll talk about today. All right, so as a part of that voter approved program, all of our funding opportunities are already outlined, and so we follow through with what we promised and what the voters approved. So this year we have the pilot mini grant opportunity for A2 water conservation. We have our B7 support volunteer cleanup efforts and education. And D3, we have 2 opportunities for the access to trails and open space projects, and then our mini grants projects. So the 2 mini grants programs were actually approved more recently. The water conservation mini grants are a pilot program, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But all of these, again, tie back to our Valley Water mission and then the Safe Clean Water program priorities. So as you can see, the grants usually alternate years. So the other opportunities that are available will typically be offered in the following year. All right, so for the actual available funding that we have to award out. So for this year's, again, our B7 volunteer cleanups and education. And so this year we have a total funding availability of $200,000. There's no minimum per grant award, but we do have a maximum amount per project, which is $50,000. And then for D3, access to trails and open space, we have a total funding amount of $571,000 and a minimum per project award, which is $25,000. And there is no maximum for that.
I have 2 questions.
Sure.
Is it possible to turn on the closed captioning?
Oh. I'm not sure how to do that. But yes, if we can, we definitely will try to do that. Peggy and Amy, I think you're both hosts as well. So is that something you can look into as we continue?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, and the next question is, how many years do we have to complete the projects for B7?
Yeah, we will be going over that. For B7 projects, the agreement term is 3 years. For D3, it's 5 years. And for mini grants, it's 2 years, but we will cover that. And so for our mini grant funding availability, like I said, we have our pilot A2 water conservation mini grant program. There's a total of 100,000 that's been available since July, with a maximum of $5,000 per project. And it's on a rolling basis until December 31st of this year. So until all the funding is expended. At this time, we have received a couple applications through there, but we definitely still have lots of funding available. For the D3 wildlife habitat restoration mini grants, there's $200,000 that's available every fiscal year, with a maximum of, again, $5,000 per project or per grant, and that's year-round on a rolling basis. So those are usually always available. All right, so for all of our grant opportunities that we have available, there are some criteria for the applicants. So the types of groups and people that can apply for the grant opportunities. So the applicants must be a local agency or municipality, a special district, a 501c3 nonprofit, a school or community college or university or another public nonprofit, or an organized, for mini grants only, we do accept organized community groups with an established structure, but they would have to identify an individual who would represent them and take on the signing of the agreement and the insurance requirements. And then for the pilot A2 mini grants, those are the water conservation mini grants. For that opportunity, we do allow for-profit organizations to apply because those are really funds for new startup water conservation technologies and innovations. So those are the criteria for to know if you're eligible to apply. And when applying and figuring out, what agency to apply with, or if there's a partnership of some sort, just know that once you're in the process, the applicants must agree to provide a signed W-9 tax form and meet all of our Valley Water insurance requirements, and then agree to a waiver of liability that releases Valley Water from any liability associated with the grant funding. For the mini grants, which is new this year, we are working with our risk manager to request some waivers for some of those mini grants as well on a case-by-case basis. But at the time of application, we do want everyone to be able to meet those insurance requirements if they can. All right, so for the project eligibility, so there are some things that are consistent throughout all of our grant projects and grant opportunities, is that all of the projects must be located in Santa Clara County. So the actual agency or group could be located outside of Santa Clara County, but as long as the work is being done in Santa Clara County and benefiting Santa Clara County residents, then the project would be eligible. The project must have matching funds of at least 25% of the total project cost, and this is again for all of our grant opportunities, including mini grants. So 25% of that project cost must be monetary, so it could be additional funding, or it could be in kind, like volunteer hours or in-kind labor hours that the group is going to be putting toward the project. Only one grant will be awarded for each project. So once you find your application and you put it toward one of the opportunities, it can't be awarded in multiple different grant types. And then the projects must be completed within the time frames that are set forth. So this was that question earlier. So our standard agreement timeframes are 3 years for the B7 volunteer cleanups, 5 years for D3 access to trails and open space, and then 2 years for all of the mini grants. And typically we do strongly encourage that the projects be completed during this time frame, but we do allow up to a maximum of 3 no-cost time extension amendments, but that's on an approved case-by-case basis. But all of the project schedules that you include in your application must show that the project will be completed within these timeframes for those types of funding opportunities.
Okay, Kristen, we have some insurance questions.
Sure.
First one from Emily. Do we need to have all certificates of insurance when applying, or just agree to have it before the grant is awarded?
Yes, we do. In the application, you can't submit without uploading something for insurance, but if it's a statement saying that you are committed to getting the insurance by the time, you know, if you are awarded the grant, and then by the time we execute the agreement, then that is fine, because we know sometimes organizations might be taking on or need to change their plan specifically to meet our insurance requirements, so that's fine. But we still need to upload something in the Fluxx system for the insurance section.
Great.
And if you have any questions or just want to confirm anything with us, you can always reach out to our team at any time. Are there any questions?
Yeah, the next question from Roy is, what is the Valley Water insurance requirement?
So the current requirement is in the 2021 standard grant guidelines, and I believe it's insurance. It insures workers' comp and then insurance up to $1 million. And so, but I would look at that a lot more closely in the 2021 standard grant guidelines, which are posted on our valleywater.org/grants website. Because I don't want to miss anything, misstate anything right now.
We have another question from Michelle regarding the matching funds. Do the matching funds have to be new funds, or can it come from an existing funding source?
Oh, that's an interesting question. One of the caveats about this, the grant itself, is that we don't allow deliverables under this grant that this grant will pay for to be also a requirement of another like agreement that the organization might have, or a mandatory like regulatory requirement. But that's a good question. I think if you have maybe like another funding source or an existing partnership that might, you know, have some intersections, we'd probably have to just take a look at that closer to what that specific existing funding source is and how it would work together with this. So that might be one, Peggy, where can we take note of who that is and we can do some follow-up?
Yes, got it.
Okay, great.
We actually have 2 more questions from Nusrat. For B7, how many grants do you expect to award the $200,000 total?
I think it really depends on the types of applications that we get. And this is also outlined in the 2021 standard grant guidelines, is that you could have the possibility of being awarded partial funding from what your initial request was, and that's all based upon the grant funding allocation matrix, which is in the 2021 standard grant guidelines, and that a percentage of funding awarded corresponds directly with the evaluation criteria and the point system that's outlined in that 2021 standard grant guidelines. So it really depends on how many applications we get, how strong those applications are, and you know, how best we can use that $200,000 that's available. So we don't have a set number in mind. I do want to just let everyone know that the B7 volunteer cleanups and education is our most popular grant opportunity. So we do usually get a higher number of applications for this one. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, there's another one. For B7, is nonprofit tax return 990 sufficient, or are audited financial statements absolutely necessary? It costs thousands of dollars to get audited financial statements. That's a lot for a small nonprofit in these financially challenging times. Can this requirement be waived on a case-by-case basis?
Yeah, I think if we can do some follow-up with the person who asked that question, we can hear more about your organization and be able to provide some guidance.
That's all.
Okay, great questions. All right, so in addition to the 2021 standard grant guidelines, we're just going to go through some criteria for the types of projects that we're looking for each of the different grant opportunities. So for the B7 volunteer cleanups and education, we're looking for projects that are related to creek cleanups, education, outreach, and watershed stewardship activities. So some sample projects are like providing education and outreach activities on to like a school group or to an older adults group on effective creeks and waterways and in under-resourced communities, or organizing volunteer creek cleanups throughout the county, or developing and implementing curriculum that talks about, the health of our waterways and watershed stewardship, and promoting that with local businesses and their employees. But anything that really ties back to the health of our creeks and our waterways. So a sample project, and this is a project that's been awarded already, is the Watershed Education Campaign done by the Guadalupe River Park Conservancy. So they were awarded $28,410 in 2018, and they had a multifaceted project. This is just one piece of it, but they increased awareness of the Guadalupe River ecosystem amongst K through 12 students, and they held a specific event for 5th grade students, a water festival. They maintained an aquarium to help as part of that awareness and education, and then they created a mural underneath the Coleman Avenue Bridge as an art piece, but also an educational piece to use that helps with their programming. So that's a sample. Another sample is our Schools Going Green project by the city of Sunnyvale. So they were awarded $32,250 in 2014. And so the city of Sunnyvale worked with middle and high school students to hold a bunch of litter cleanup events in their campuses and neighborhoods, which were all located near creeks, and worked with the students to lead some behavior change campaigns to prevent littering. And they actually received an award in 2017 from the California Stormwater Quality Association for an outstanding stormwater project. So we're really proud of that. All right. So for our D3 access to trails and open space grant opportunity, this funding is really intended for projects that are providing new access to trails and open space. So some sample projects are like constructing a new bridge that links two trails together that will, create a longer trail or key trail connections. Creation of a trail that provides a significant link to the Creekside Trail network, or creating new trails and things like that. So we have a couple sample D3 projects to share with you. So one is our Calero Reservoir Oak Cove Trail project. and it was done by the County of Santa Clara. They received $125,980 in 2015, and they constructed a new 5-mile trail and did restoration in that area around Calero Reservoir. So they were able to connect the north side of the trail network at that location. And another sample project is the Webb Creek Bridge project that was done by the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District. It received $149,500 in 2018, and they constructed a new bridge over Webb Creek in the Bear Creek Redwoods Open Space Preserve, as you can see in this beautiful photo, and it fit into their multi-phase plan to provide public access into the reserve area. All right, so for those 2 grant opportunities, this is the grant application timeline. So this is the process that the applications will go through. So we receive all of the applications or the proposals by December 1st at 11:59 p.m. and the applications are due into our Fluxx grants management system. So you have to have submitted through the system in order for us to receive those applications by that time, and there will be no exceptions. Then through December and January, our evaluation team, which is made up of external and 2 Valley Water and internal subject matter experts on each of the different topic areas for the grant opportunities, and they will do the scoring and the discussion using the evaluation and the point system that's in the 2021 standard grant guidelines. So we really encourage you to take a look at those, because that's exactly the same evaluation sheet that our evaluators will use. So we try to be very transparent throughout the whole process. And then once all the scores are finalized and they've had their discussions, then staff presents the evaluators' recommendations to the Valley Water Board of Directors. And we'll typically try to get into a public board meeting in February or March of 2021. And we'll present the recommendations, and then the Valley Water Board of Directors actually is the body that approves all of the grant awards. So they will review and usually approve on staff's recommendation in a public board meeting. So once the grant awards are approved by our Valley Water Board of Directors, then we'll send out a notice to all of the applicants and letting you know about the status of the application and if you were awarded or not, or received partial award. And then at that time is when staff will begin working with the awardee on the actual agreement. And so it's we work on a contract between Valley Water and the grant group or organization. And once it's signed by both parties, that is the date that the project begins and that we can start accepting invoices for work done no earlier than the date that that agreement is executed. So even if you get the award notice, we will not be able to reimburse for any invoices that take place until after the agreement has been fully executed and enacted. All right. Did anyone have questions about the main grant opportunity process?
Yeah, there is a question from Ben regarding the V3 Access to Trails grants. Does this fund feasibility studies or only construction projects?
That's a great question. So in our 2021 standard grant guidelines, and it applies for all of the projects that grant opportunities, is that at least 80% of the grant must be funding construction or implementation. And no more than 20% of the grant can go toward planning and design. Any other questions?
That's all that I see here. Thanks.
Okay, great. All right. So for the mini grant projects, the mini grants overall are meant to be seed funding to help groups and individuals test out an idea and potentially get some data and turn it into something that could potentially be a larger grant project in the future, or to kickstart something for the group. So for the A2 water conservation mini grants, the topic area is water conservation. So we're looking for projects that help identify potential water reduction technologies and methods, and researching new and innovative technologies, and then conducting education and outreach related to water conservation. So that was a new grant opportunity opened this year through December 31st. So we don't have any samples of that mini grant opportunity to share with you, but here is an opportunity of another water conservation grant that we did give out under the main grants, and this is the microstreams faucet adapter for the Luctron, and they received $30,000 in 2016, and they tested out these new water saving faucet adapters. For the D3 wildlife habitat restoration mini grants, these are intended for projects that are related to educational activities or outreach materials that really focus on watershed stewardship and wildlife restoration. It's also meant for any projects that have physical improvements, such as invasive plant removal or native planting, and then surveys to identify open space needs and trail accessibility, or research projects that benefit the restoration of wildlife or support trails and open space. So a sample project for a D3 mini grant is our Watershed and Wildlife Education project that was done by the Bay Area older adults. They received $5,000, which is the maximum amount of a mini grant, in 2018. And they provided outdoor educational programs for older adults, and they learned all about their watersheds through different hikes and field trips to different locations throughout the county. And so we really look for, this is a great example of a project that had very strong measurable results. So they did a pre and post survey of the participants to gauge how effective their educational program was in helping people to learn about their watershed education. So the mini grant application process is a little bit different than the main grant process, because they're accepted on an ongoing basis until all the funding is awarded, or till December 31st for the water conservation mini grants. So again, all of the applications are accepted online through our Fluxx grants management system. And then it takes about 1 to 2 months for staff to review the applications, and sometimes there's some back and forth where we try to work with the applicants to create a stronger application or to get clarifying information. And then we'll route it for approval, and this the board delegated the approval for mini grants to our CEO, who delegated to the Chief of External Affairs, so we're able to get this approved through a staff level. And then again, once the grant is awarded, then we will work with the grantee to execute a grant agreement. And so again, that is the time when the work can begin, or that the first invoice can happen, is once the executed agreement is in place. And then you can start your projects. So the good thing or the difference about the mini grants versus the main grants is that, you know, there's small dollar amounts up to $5,000. So we do pay out an initial 50% of the grant award as soon as the grant agreement is in place. And then after the project is completed, and then you can bill us for the final 50% of the grant award. So there'll really be only 2 invoices for the mini grants. And that's supposed to help us streamline the process. All right. So before I hand this off to Amy to do the Fluxx tutorial and go through our online grants management system, I'm going to switch my screen really quick. Okay. And I wanted to point out a document. So all the slides we just went through are posted on our website at valleywater.org/grants. And there's another document that we suggest that you read prior to beginning your application, and that's our frequently asked questions. So this just has a little bit more explanation in writing of some of the things that need to be submitted about the matching fund. In here, we have a recommendation for estimating the value of volunteer hours. So we use a standard national nonprofits group on their volunteer value. So in California, the value is $31.51 per hour. We have just a lot of other questions about the restrictions and use of funds. And as you will see in the 2021 standard grant guidelines for the main grants, we do have a bonus point section. And so those are 3 different items that applicants can get up to 5 bonus points for. And one of them is if you're a first-time applicant, if you can demonstrate financial stability, and then if you're serving a disadvantaged community. And so the way we define disadvantaged community is we use the California EPA's disadvantaged community map. And so the link to that map online is here in the FAQs, so you can check to see if your project would meet any of those shaded areas that are shown in the EPA map. Then there's a mini grant specific FAQ. And then there are some definitions for the commonly used terms that we have throughout our different grant opportunities. So I really recommend that everyone read through these, as well as the 2021 standard grant guidelines that are posted on the websites. So there's the one for B7 specifically, and it outlines the entire process. It has all of the minimum requirements, qualifications, and evaluation criteria. So again, this is what I was explaining, that our evaluators use these exact forms and questions and point system to do the evaluation. So it's very transparent. And then the grant funding allocation matrix here shows that if your project gets ranked with a certain amount of points, it could equate to a percentage of the funding awarded. And then there's the Fluxx grants management system instructions. Oh, this one is a good one, our sample resolution. So if you are an organization that has a governing body, we do require that your governing body vote on a resolution that allows the group or organization to apply for the grant and guarantees that if you are awarded the funds, you will follow through with the project. So this is a sample resolution to include with your application if that applies to your group. And then all of the grantee insurance requirements, this is the same exact language that will be included in an executed agreement if you get awarded the funding. And so, yeah, it has all of the required coverages. So this is in here as well. And a checklist. This is really nice. Okay. And then another thing too is once we're in the Fluxx grants management system, you'll see this, but there are sections for all the required documents. So you will not be able to submit your application unless all the sections are filled out. One thing that I do want to make sure that everyone's clear on is that even though you can upload everything, we will be doing the checks to make sure that your insurance coverage information matches the information of the applicant agency or group and the W-9 information. So if any of those things are different, then we need to know that. And so let us know, and we need some sort of explanation of how those different groups are working together. So if you feel like you might be in that situation, we really highly recommend that you reach out to our team so we can work with you one-on-one. All right. Are there any questions left on this piece?
Yes, there's 3 questions.
Okay, great.
The first one from Richard. Does National River Cleanup Day, Coastal Cleanup Day, and Adopt a Creek qualify for a B7 grant?
No, those are separate volunteer programs that are run by Valley Water. So the National River Cleanup Day, Coastal Cleanup Day, it's all volunteer run, as well as our Adopt a Creek volunteer stewardship program. And so those are all run through a separate program, and where all of the cleanup supplies are provided through that program. So those would have to be, anything under B7 would have to be clearly separate from any other volunteer activities. As well as for the permits. So if you are already an Adopt a Creek partner and you have a permit to do cleanups along that stretch of creek, you would have to get a different permit for the activities under the grant that are separate from the Adopt a Creek activities. But that's a good question. And that also goes back to that we are looking to make sure that there aren't any other obligations or requirements or other agreements that the project is already committed to or going to be funded by. So in that case, if you already had cleanups that were a part of the Adopt a Creek program or any of those volunteer cleanup days, they wouldn't count under here, under a grant.
From Rajiv, will we be sharing the presentation?
Yes, the presentation slides are actually already posted on our valleywater.org/grants website, right next to the frequently asked questions document.
From Julia Model, are all project proposals expected to be fully adapted to COVID public health requirements, or can you propose a standard way of implementing a project in a COVID adapted way if necessary? I ask because the main grant projects start in June 2021, and we don't know what the public health situation will be like in the future.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I don't think anybody has their crystal ball to know what's going to happen over the course of the next year. So what we would recommend doing is, if there are aspects of if you have like the ideal program in your mind is taking students out to the creek and doing a cleanup and an environmental lesson or something like that, if you maybe have an alternative, if we are still in the shelter-in-place environment, and maybe saying that you might produce a video that's shared in classrooms with reaching the same number of students or something like that. So it's okay if you say, this is like what our goal is to do, but if we can't do that due to public health guidance, then we'll do this instead. That's perfectly fine.
Roy, we have, how do I reach out to the team? I have a unique situation I need clarification on.
Okay, you're welcome to reach out to us at grants@valleywater.org. It's the email address that reaches Peggy and Amy and myself. And so we check that regularly and respond. So if you send an email there, let us know. Peggy, if you could maybe take down his information, or if you want to put that in the chat, not the Q&A, then we can get your email address and follow up with you.
Okay, I've also included the email in the questions. So if anybody else is interested in emailing us directly, you can go ahead and take a look at that answer and you'll see our email there.
Great, thanks, Peggy.
From Emily, can you explain more about the California Environmental Quality Act and how we could apply for a categorical exemption, or what documentation is needed around that?
That's an excellent question. I am going to ask either Kirsten or Tiffany to see if they can talk about that.
Hi all, this is Tiffany. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. So it depends on the grantee and what kind of organization they are. If they're a nonprofit or if they're a lead agency, it varies. But all grantees are subjected to CEQA review. And say that you're a nonprofit organization and you have a project, it depends on a case-by-case scenario. If your project is exempt, we'll review that and we will file an exemption on that behalf. If it's more, then we would have to discuss further. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, Emily, if you have any more questions about that, you can also email us directly and just tell us more about your situation and we can provide a better answer.
Yeah, all really good questions.
From Roy Hayes, I have filled out an organization profile but have not been notified of approval.
Okay, we will check the Fluxx system and see if that's come in recently, because I did just check this morning. We try to do that regularly to make sure that everyone gets approved right away, but we'll take another look. All right, any other questions?
Yep, that's the last question. We also have Blanca from our team to share the Water 101 Academy. You want to do that right now?
Yeah, that would be great. Okay, so I'm going to stop my share so that Amy can get teed up for the next thing while Blanca does the announcement.
Alrighty, hello everyone. I'm not sure why my camera's not, oh, no, it is. Not sure why my camera's not showing me. So let me just do something real quick. At the end of the day, it's fine. You don't need to be able to see me anyways. I can just talk. So I just wanted to share a little bit, and thank you to Kristen and team for letting me talk to you about our Water 101 Academy. We wanted to make sure that we let our community know we just opened the application for this program. It's a free program that Valley Water offers to interested community members who want to learn more about our local water issues, what's going on in our community, and getting more actively involved in not only helping advance some of the conversation and making sure that everyone in our community is included in the conversation, but also making sure that our volunteers have a more in-depth knowledge and understanding of what are the issues, what are the things that Valley Water and our community is doing, and how we can help advance both water issues and environmental stewardship concerns. So the Academy, we're looking for our participants for our third cohort. We are looking for 21 Water 101 Academy participants that will be selected by our board of directors. Participants, in order to be able to be selected or eligible, do need to be Santa Clara County residents. They do need to be over the age of 18, and they need to be willing to participate in all of the sessions. The Academy consists of 5 two-hour sessions that start in March and end in May. They run roughly about every 2 weeks, and every 3 weeks. And then once you've completed the Academy, then you graduate on to becoming a water ambassador. And so as a water ambassador, the only commitment really are quarterly meetings that we have with all of our team. But beyond that, it's really up to you as an ambassador to decide how involved and what causes you want to be involved with. So if you are interested or anyone in your network is interested, please be sure to share the information. I'll be putting the link to our website and the application in the chat so that you have a reference. Or also please feel free to reach out to us to volunteers@valleywater.org. Other than that, if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them. But if not, hopefully we'll see some of you as among the applicants and you'll be part of our third cohort or our 2021 Water 101 Academy cohort. Thank you, Kristen.
Yeah, thank you, Blanca, for sharing that. Now we're going to go over to Amy, and she's going to do a tutorial on the Fluxx grants management system.
Hi, everybody. I'm Amy Fonseca again. Nice to see you. I may know some of you if you've already applied and were awarded a grant in the past. What we're going to do is we're going to go over the Fluxx system. I'm going to show you how to set up an account. I'm going to show you briefly how to submit an application and to save it. And we'll go over some of the attachments very briefly. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box, or sorry, the question box. So I'll start here. This is our website. Okay, it's going a little slow. This is our website, and here you'll find a lot of the resources that Kristen had mentioned earlier. You might see some familiar faces, but depending on the grant that you want to go to, there are these, the grant criteria are here, but also the Fluxx management system link is here. So you can go ahead and click it there, and that will take you here. We'll also be emailing that out after this meeting. Hang on just a sec. Great. So once you're at the Fluxx portal, you'll want to create an account now. And some of you may have already done this step, so we'll go through it pretty quickly. If you have any questions, again, you can always reach out to us at grants@valleywater.org. Okay, so you'll click on that create an account, and the first thing that you'll see is this questionnaire, and it's an eligibility questionnaire. So it'll ask you some basic questions. Are you a nonprofit? Do you fall under one of these? So go ahead and answer it. So we're going to say yes. The grant requires that the project be completed in Santa Clara County. So it's going to ask if the project is located there. So hopefully the answer is yes. The project requires a minimum 25 match, as Kristen had discussed earlier, and we'll go over that a little bit when putting together a budget. So hopefully the answer to that is yes. And is the proposed project at least 80% implementation? So we can go over that a little bit more in depth, but that is a requirement. And is the project discretionary or not required to be completed by other obligations? So that's what Kristen had explained earlier. Is it part of your regular work, or is it part of this special project? So I believe the answer is yes there, and then you'll click submit. So that means you've passed the initial screen, and that's all automated. So if you have any problems with that, go ahead and reach out to us. I know that every situation is different. So if you're having trouble with that, just feel free to reach out to us, grants@valleywater.org. If you have a GuideStar EIN profile lookup number, you can actually look it up here, and that will pull up all of your information. I'm going to guess most people don't have that, but it's there for you. If not, then you'll just go ahead and manually put the information in. So you'll select the type of agency you are or nonprofit. The state of incorporation is likely going to be California, but it could be somewhere else. The legal name, so whatever your nonprofit or entity is called. So we'll just call this test. Organization. An acronym if you go by another name. The address. The city. The country. The state. Your organization email. We'll put that, your organization phone, and your tax ID and a website. If you don't have that information, that's fine. And again, I wanted to let you guys know you can always change this information at a later date. So once you're assigned an account, you are able to go in and change things. It's going to ask for a primary contact, so it's most likely the person that's going to be entering this information. And again, you can change that at a later date. So we'll go ahead and put that. And then once all the information is filled out, go ahead and submit request. Ooh, it's saying there's an error. Let's see. Oh, we forgot to put the zip code. Okay, hopefully that takes care of that. Great. So then you'll see this notification. It says thank you. So what's going to happen is this is actually going to go to that grants@valleywater.org email. And so our staff will go in, take a look at the information and approve that. And you'll get an email notification. And it'll have your login credentials and all of that, password. So if you have any trouble with that, or if you don't get an email confirmation within 12 hours, just let us know. You can always reach out to us. So once your account is approved, you will have your portal. So this is your homepage once you log in. And from here, you can apply for any grant that you'd like. And there's also some support information. Again, the RFP guidelines for each priority grant is here. You can click it there. And then we also have the mini grants, all of that good information. So if you're already sure which one you're going to apply for, you can go ahead and start your application by clicking on the type of grant. And then you'll start filling out that information. So I already started one, just to kind of speed things up. So you can always go back and save these items. Once you save it, it'll go under drafts here. This is also, if you are awarded a grant, where you'll come to submit invoices and stuff. So, you know, with time, you'll become very familiar with this program. It's one stop. Okay, so you can see our grant book, Annie, she's been busy. She's got a lot of different grants that she's applying for. Again, you can always come back and edit them. So you'll click on the grant, and then there's this little edit button at the top. Okay, so this is it. This is the application. You'll go in and start entering the information, the primary contact, where did you hear about us? We like to keep that information. It helps us in planning our program. The project title, the project location. You'll want to be pretty detailed in the location. So for purposes of this, I have here a very simple application. You'll definitely want to have more detail than what I have in here. But we're going to go ahead and call this a B7 cleanup project. And this is a Sample Creek in Gilroy. So you'll go in and you'll put your project summary. So this project, they're going to engage local volunteers to help clean up Sample Creek located in Gilroy. And they're also going to do some education and outreach. You're going to put in your total project cost and your requested grant amount. And this information, you'll want to put together your budget first. So again, you're probably going to be in here saving a lot, coming back, saving. And so just keep that in mind. And you can always save if you want to stop. Put this date there. Do we have any questions before I go forward?
We do. From Emily, are there word or character limits for these fill-in questions?
I believe there are, but it's pretty, there is a big amount that you can type in. If you run into any problems with that, let us know, or any technical problems, we'll reach out to the Fluxx.
Yeah, for the mini grants, there is character limits, but I usually just suggest if there's more information you want to share, you can attach it as a Word document or PDF in the upload documents section, and then just make a reference in the section that you're filling out for us to reference that document.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Amy, I'd like to do to add one more thing too.
Sure.
So say you have a whole team that's working on a project, and each of you are going to take pieces of the application, you know, related to your job description. So you can have multiple people working on the same application as long as everybody puts in the same exact organization information. Then in the system on the back end, we can link everyone together through that organization. And so anybody who has a user account that's linked to that organization can see any of the grant applications that that organization has submitted through the Fluxx system. And then you can go in and you can edit and work on any grant applications together with multiple contributors. So hopefully we think that's a helpful feature for the grantees.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen. There's also an option once you save it to print it. So if you want to print a PDF and share anybody, you know, via email, you also have that option. Any other questions before I move forward? No? Okay, great. Okay, so project summary, you know, you'll want to give a pretty good summary of the project. Now we're at project cost. So what I'm going to do, Peggy had mentioned there are some attachments at the bottom. So again, this is why you'll want to save it, because you can kind of toggle back and forth between the different sections. There is this Appendix C, what we call, and this is a budget template. So if you click on this, what you'll get is a blank template, and to save some time, I already put in the information. But this is the information that you're going to gather to plug into those spaces. So there are some formulas in here, so that'll help you put together a budget. And you'll want to save this outside of the Fluxx system on your desktop. But this is one of the required documents. Again, you'll want to take a look at that RFP guideline and make sure that you read that thoroughly. That'll have a lot of information for you. So per that guideline, this is one of the required documents. So for our sample project, we have a supervisor that's making $5 an hour. Again, this is just a sample. It's not based on real life here. The project hours, the amount. And so there are formulas in here that will calculate the benefit rate. Oops, excuse me. And so our supervisor making $5 an hour, we're estimating that the project is going to require 20 hours. And so it'll calculate that amount to $100. When we add the benefit rate, we've got 20% for a total amount for the project of 120. So you'll want to look at first building your budget is what I would do in this column before I start going through the other columns. And there are different line items. You'll be able to add them here. So since this is the creek cleanup, we have garbage pickers, we have garbage bags. And again, this is not based on reality, so the costs are very low. And so you'll plug in whatever the cost is and volunteer time. So that brings us to an important point. So you can have match, and the match can be what they call in kind. So volunteer hours can actually be quantified in a dollar amount to count as a match. So what our grantee has done is they've gone and calculated the volunteer time. And so the unit cost, again, in the guidelines, you can find the link to this information, but we base it on this independentsector.org. And again, the link is in the guidelines. And we'll look for the state of California to see how much is a volunteer's time worth. And so for California, 1 hour of volunteer time, they estimate to be of $31.51 value. So we went ahead and we plugged that in here. The number of units, so we're saying it's 20 hours, again, not realistic. It's probably gonna be more. And then you'll get this total. For the grand total of 1,648. I really wanted to make this a round number, but I wasn't able to do that. So that's what we're saying is the total project cost, not necessarily what you're requesting from Valley Water. Now, the next step would be to go in and see, okay, well, which part, who's going to fund each piece here? So the grantee, other contributors, so you may have a partner, you may have somebody else who is committed to providing match funds, you may have another grant, and then the Valley Water District request, right? So for example, we have 2 interns working, they're making $2 an hour, and this grantee is working with the school, so the school has given them a grant for half the amount of the hourly pay. So we're gonna request $6 and then with the match of 6. So again, it's totaling that up. They're gonna have snacks and water out for the volunteers at the creek cleanups, and they've had a bakery commit to providing $200 worth of food, but they would like Valley Water to pay for $100, so I don't know, for water. So that grand total for other project contributions is going to be $212, again, from the school and from the bakery. And then, so the grand total for Valley Water is going to be $788. So we're going to see if we met the match requirement. So again, what your organization is going to be matching versus the total project cost. And we have 39, so it's about 39%. Again, this is very simple. Every project is different. If you're struggling with this, feel free to reach out. So the last piece of this is you'll want to put together your budget per task. So again, you're only going to be looking at this column C. So which task is that going towards? So this is the supervisor's salary. So that's 120, but that person's only going to be, I'm sorry, that's going to be 60 hours at the cleanup sites, $40 at the outreach. So that's a very simplified version. I know I went very quickly through that. Do we have any questions before I move on and show you how this relates to the application?
Yeah, we do have a budget question from Chris. Can insurance costs for a single event be part of the budget?
Yes, I believe so. Any other questions? So again, this is just a sample. If you're talking about a trail project, you're going to have very different costs. And this is kind of high level. So you'll probably, work on a spreadsheet or to really drill down to how much each line item is going to cost. But you want to be as detailed as possible because this is what we're going to be using to review your budget and to make the recommendation for funding. Well, the reviewers will do that. Okay, so that was very quick.
One thing to add really quick. So thanks, that's a great overview, Amy, and a great sample budget. So just so that everyone knows, this exact budget template, if you are awarded the grant, it will transition exactly into our invoice template. We will use this exactly. So anything that goes on here, when it comes to invoicing, we will be looking for timesheets and those logs or pay stubs for any of the labor costs that are put in the top section of the spreadsheet. And then for the other costs, which are the direct costs, we'll be looking for the receipts of the garbage pickers and any of those supplies, or an invoice from a sub-consultant who's doing the feasibility study or whatever that is. So just know that that's the what we'll be looking for when it comes time to invoicing. So it's good to sometimes know that, to keep that in mind when you're putting together the budget.
Exactly. Yeah. And you want to be pretty, try to be realistic in your costs, because once we have the agreement locked down, we're not going to be able to pay. Like if you're asking 50 cents for garbage bags, we're not going to be able to reimburse for more than that. without, you know, some kind of amendment.
Yeah, I just have another recommendation too. Like, we know trail projects, for example, they're very complex. There's a lot of things happening. So as you can see here, the template is already set up for just 4 tasks in the columns. So sometimes we recommend that for the purposes of the budget, that you have broader task names, like task 1 could be planning and design, and then maybe, you know, in the scope of work, you outline all the subtasks in more detail of what that entails. But then at least you have a broader bucket of for the budgeting piece. And then that kind of keeps it easier once you get to invoicing as well, because once if you're awarded the grant and for the agreement will say that you can't move more than 10% of one task to another task. Like, say something changes, you can't move more than 10% of that task amount to another task. If it ends up being something completely different happens, you know, we can talk about that on a case-by-case basis once the agreement's executed. But yeah, that's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and so that's a really good point. I know that Kristen had mentioned this, but every grant type has its own requirements for the budget. So please be sure to look at the RFP guidelines. Okay, so again, if you have any questions about match or in-kind, you know, reach out to us, grants@valleywater.org. So again, if your total project cost was $100, the match should be at least $25. Okay.
Amy, we have another question about this budget sheet. What if I have different benefit percentages for different employees? Is that something that can be customized?
Perhaps Kristen can answer that. I know that there's a cap of 20%. So if the benefit rate is higher than that, you know, we won't be able to reimburse more than that.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, Amy, that in the standard grant guidelines, it should outline this of the limits that we set of what we'll pay out. So if your benefits rate is like 40%, we're only going to pay out up to 20% as shown here. So those are our own limits. The same thing when it says down there the indirect overhead, which is limited to 10%. So all of this is already formulated to fit the requirements of the grant.
Yeah, and if you have any special situation, feel free to reach out to us. Okay, great. So now going back, so again, this is one reason why it's good to save. You'll go back now that you have that information solidified, put in your total project cost. Again, it's not what you're requesting of Valley Water, it's the project as a whole. And then how much you're requesting from Valley Water. So that'll be that piece. The grantee contribution, again, is monetary, and then we're going to break it out by in-kind. And again, if you have any questions about in-kind or you want to run some scenarios past us, feel free to reach out at grants@valleywater.org. Okay, so does your project have a cleanup component? So yes, you'll answer the questions. Again, this is just a sample. You want to be a little bit more detailed. The criteria, again, are in the RFP guidelines. So take a look at that when you're developing and crafting your answers in your proposal. Because the more detail that you can provide, the better for the reviewer to kind of understand what your project's all about.
And Amy, to that point, I think you bring up a good point, a good guideline to know like what types of things should I be putting in and what should I really highlight is going back to the 2021 standard grant guidelines and especially looking at that evaluation criteria that has the points allocated to it, because know that our reviewers are going to be using that and looking at every application. So they're looking for specific things to equate their point value rating. And so, you know, that would be a good guiding document for putting together the responses for the questions in the application.
Right. So for the sake of time, I won't go through all of the samples, but again, you want to be detailed. For example, they're asking, what are the measurable outcomes? What are the tasks? So the simple tasks are, oh, we're going to go out and we're going to clean a creek. Probably better to explain how many creeks. How are you going to do this? How are you going to measure it? So for example, they're going to be recruiting approximately 200 volunteers for 4 creek cleanups over 2 years. They're going to remove 60 bags of garbage per event at different hotspots. They're going to create 2 online workshops for the general public. And then they're going to do a pre and post survey to see how much students are learning from their workshops. So maybe they're targeting a 20% increase in creek knowledge or stewardship knowledge. Please describe the area of the communities that benefit from this project. Again, I put in Gilroy residents because the creek is in Gilroy, but actually down the creek, there's also benefits. So we could say it could benefit the whole of Santa Clara County. So you want to put some detail in there. If there are certain demographics you're going to be reaching out to, feel free to put it in. We do have those bonus points available for in the guidelines.
Yeah, for that question too, I think another good example is like, say you know, are gonna have your activity on a certain creek or at a certain park near a certain creek or at the tech museum, or you have some sort of location. This is a question that will allow you to elaborate on who's coming. So it's different from the project location, could be located in like, you know, a certain park, but the community that's being served from that project could be that you're gonna do specific outreach to communities or schools in those disadvantaged community areas, or you know, that'll be representative of the county or something like that, of who's participating and who will benefit.
Right. So the project collaborators, do you have another grant from somebody else or somebody who's going to match? Here I have local wildlife and environmental nonprofits, but you want to be specific, like who are they? You know, as much information as you can provide. The outreach plan, you want to put that information in. Oh, here are some interesting questions. So do you have a permit for the proposed work? So you'll want to start thinking about the permitting. Have you already reached out to Valley Water? We kind of want to see where you are in that process. Do you even know if you are required to have a permit? Again, that one's probably, if you're not sure, you can reach out to us at grants@valleywater.org. But many creek cleanups will require a permit from different agencies. It may even require a permit from Valley Water. And so we have to work with our permitting staff to help push that along, but we're not able to waive that requirement. Will the project require CEQA? Again, all projects will require some kind of CEQA review, whether it's exempt or there are different determinations, but it still requires that. So keep that in mind. And again, each project is a little different. The CEQA review for a trail project is going to be different than a CEQA review for a cleanup project. Is there anything you wanted to add about that, Kristen?
Yeah, so I just wanted everyone to know that even if you're not doing a CEQA, or it's considered not a project for your organization, so you don't do anything with CEQA, Valley Water is a responsible agency under the CEQA umbrella, and so we're funding a project, and so we do our own internal CEQA review, which is what Tiffany and Kirsten help us with. And we'll do that for all the projects, no matter what the determination is. And we just kind of like say if it's not a project or if it's exempt. But one thing to note is that if your CEQA is in progress, it's really important to put when you think it's going to be completed, because it's a standard Valley Water policy that the projects need to be CEQA compliant before we can enter into a grant agreement. If something is, for some reason, changed and you're not able to do that, we need to know that right away, because we might need to use a modified grant agreement template for that project to allow to execute the agreement prior to the project being CEQA compliant. So again, if you think that's the case, it would be great to hear more about the situation and expected timing in this section.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I put to be determined. It's actually not like a super great answer, so don't do what our grantee did here. You want to put a little bit more information because again, the CEQA is a component of the rating for the RFP review. So take a look at those guidelines. Okay, have you ever received a—
Just another note, sorry, on the CEQA. In the frequently asked questions, there's a little bit more of a description of what we would be looking for in that section. And I don't know, Tiffany or Kirsten, if you want to elaborate on that at all.
No, I think you covered everything. The facts sheet does explain into more detail on what's required. It's really important to provide a detailed project description to us so we can do our analysis and be CEQA compliant as a responsible agency.
Right. So again, throughout the whole application, you want to be as detailed as you possibly can to convey that information. Because again, we have different people, different subject matter experts taking a look at what you're proposing. Project start date and end date. As you recall, maybe in Kristen's presentation, it takes a little bit of time between when you submit the application and when it's actually executed and ready to go. So keep that in mind. Sometimes it can take multiple months. So a realistic, keep that in mind when you're putting your timeline together. You're not likely going to start in January. It's more likely going to be a couple months out. But again, this is, if you are awarded, we'll work with you on this. So you'll want to put in the task. Again, the task, if you think back to the budget that I provided, you'll want to align those as like main tasks, put in the milestone information. Some projects have more subtasks than others, and you can put that in your project scope, or you can reach out to us and we can chat about that. The cool thing about Valley Water is we have so many different type of grant opportunities, which means that there's no one size fits all for every project. Okay, so we're back to Appendix A. So again, take a look at, these are the documents that you'll be uploading as part of your grant agreement. I'm sorry, as part of your application. Take a look at those guidelines because it'll tell you exactly what the reviewers are looking for when putting together your scope. We have a little guide here. It has the requirements. Again, take a look at that, but you'll upload it here. Your project budget, which we went over, the resolution, which is in the guidelines as well, and there's a sample here. The 501c termination letter, W-9, audited financial statements. Again, if there's an issue with any of these documents, please reach out to us and we can kind of talk through your situation, but these are the basic requirements. So I'm just going to show you really quick how to upload the document, how to save, and then we'll open it up for questions.
And can we possibly do the project scope? Because we have a question about how it's suggested that they present the required information for the project scope. Is it bullets, table, etc.?
Yeah, I've seen different things. Again, you want to be detailed. So a list probably isn't gonna, get you a lot of points. Again, look at the guidelines. There is this it's a guide here for the requirements. And then there's also a section in the scoring matrix here, which you see project scope. They're asking for a project description, the task, the deliverables, success measures, outreach, presentation. And again, you want to, when you're thinking of outputs and inputs and measurable things. So again, not just say we're going to do creek cleanups, how many creek cleanups, and not just we're doing a workshop where people will learn stuff, how much will they learn? So in the Fluxx system, there is this guide about a project scope, you know, site location. You can add, we've seen people add maps, screenshots, photographs, you can add that. The tasks, the deliverables, the subtask, you know, what does it mean to do outreach? If outreach is a task, what does that mean? Okay, well, we're gonna put together webinars, and we're gonna go out to event tables, and we're gonna give out packets with information in it. So as much detail as you can. You know, I know we don't have much time here to go over all the ins and outs, but this is a really good guide, and it is located in the Fluxx system.
So just to help answer that question of like, okay, you know, where do I even start, is usually we see a project scope come in and there's just headers for each of those different requirements with like paragraphs and narrative about with that information, and supplemented with if a table, you know, might show us the information more clearly. Some people do use tables and add those in, or adding in maps of the project site or photos of, you know, a previous similar type of project or things like that. So I would say we are a little bit more flexible on the actual formatting, but we will still be looking for that same type of information in the standard grant guidelines throughout all of the applications. But it's just a Word document that you would upload here. And so we're just really going to be, you know, looking at how, if those the projects meet that criteria, and how strongly do they meet the criteria.
Yeah, really good point. Because ultimately the scope, if you are awarded, becomes the agreement. Okay, so you'll click on this little plus and you can take things off, but it's just like many other software. You add files, it'll look on your computer. I'm not going to go through that just to save time, but you'll see it pop up like this, you know, and you'll select which one you want. And then start upload, and then go ahead and save. Again, you can see, you're probably going to toggle back and forth between different questions. Once everything is complete and everybody's happy with what they have, and you're ready to submit that before December 1st, 2020, when they're due, you'll click the submit. But if you're not ready to do that, you can always go back and forth between your draft and click the edit whenever you're going to add more information. So that concludes, that's a very quick introduction into Fluxx, and hopefully that was helpful. So I'm here for questions.
Great, thank you, Amy. And thank you to our entire panel for being here. We have 3 minutes left, it looks like. If there are any last questions.
Yeah, Kristen, there's 2 questions. One from Rajiv. Are there any certification requirements for persons leading a project, say for a trail cleanup?
I don't think we have like minimum for that type of role, like, you know, certifications, or if they have to have a PE or anything like that, but we do request the resumes of key staff to be enclosed in the application as well, in that upload document section.
Right. Next question from Emily. My project, education project, will be virtual because of COVID. Any suggestions for address location?
I would really emphasize the community served in that instance. So the actual program might be happening virtually, but where are those students coming from, or those participants coming from that would be learning and going through your curriculum?
That's all the questions we have in the queue.
Great. Well, we just really like to thank everyone for joining today and for checking out our Valley Water grant funding opportunities. We're really excited to partner with our community and do some meaningful projects. It's always great and exciting for our team to see all the great ideas that come in that our community has, and just seeing all the enthusiasm around like water conservation and habitat restoration and environmental education. So thanks for tuning in. As we said, our team is always available and very willing to help and answer questions along the way as you get into your applications, or just have questions in general about our grants and partnerships program. So grants@valleywater.org. And then our website is valleywater.org/grants. And that has all the materials that we covered today. All right. Well, we'll stick around for a few more minutes if anyone has any last questions, but otherwise I think that wraps it up for us, and thank you for joining.